So with that in mind, I want to very briefly introduce the panelists and then give them a chance to introduce themselves. So our panel includes Mr. Everett Gillison, Deputy Mayor for Public Safety of the City of Philadelphia, Mr. Wayne Jacobs, Executive Director for Ex-Offenders for Community Empowerment, Ms. Donna Reed Miller, Councilwoman Donna Reed Miller, Councilwoman for the City of Philadelphia, Mr. Thomas J. Innes, Director of Prison Services for the Defender Association of Philadelphia, and last but not least, Judge L. Felipe Restrepo, Magistrate Judge for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. So with that, I'd like for each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves, explain their perspective on the issues at hand, and any projects that they're working on. Take it away. Sir? Yes.
Good morning. Again, my name is Everett Gillison. I'm the Deputy Mayor for Public Safety. A little bit about what the title pretty much requires me is that in the Nutter administration, I serve as the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Director. The Police Commissioner, the Fire Commissioner, the Prisons Commissioner report to me. I have budgetary authority over all of those departments, as well as I serve as the liaison to the Criminal Justice Section. We have started something known as the Criminal Justice Advisory Board, and it is my role to represent the mayor with all of the other partners. Those partners include the district attorney, the public defender, as well as the rest of what makes an integrated system. The health commissioner comes to the meetings along with behavioral health and everything that actually touches the criminal justice system. So I also have their budgets actually come through my office as well. So I stay pretty busy trying to maintain a very good relationship with not only the stakeholders, but also trying to make sure that we are advancing in our understanding of how to deal with a variety of issues that touch public safety. In addition, in my area, I have also a supervisory role over what's known as the Mayor's Office or the Reintegration Services for Ex-Offenders, or RISE, as well as the Mayor's Office on Faith Initiatives. I asked for those offices to be included because I think that there is a faith-based initiative that we can actually deal with, and the faith community has always taken a very large role in helping people who are ex-offenders reintegrate. So I thought that would be a natural fit, and that's pretty much what I kind of do. It's not that busy. Thank you.
My name is Wayne Jacobs, and I'm the co-founder and executive director of Ex-Offenders. The other co-founder of Ex-Offenders, or EXE, is a commuted lifer. He's been home for like 16 years. Myself, I would be classified as a career criminal. I spent the last 20, 25 years going back and forth through the prison system. If you would look at my record, you would automatically say that I shouldn't have been home, that I should still be incarcerated because of my past history, and I wouldn't have been able to get a second chance if it wasn't for my own ability to find a way to get out of jail, to be able to do what I'm doing today. My organization primarily focuses on 3 issues. One issue is stopping the illegal transfer of guns. We have been successful in getting the city of Philadelphia to introduce legislation around the reporting of lost and stolen guns. It was our organization that was the catalyst or the motive to get the city to pass that bill. Our organization also focused on ending the economic and social apartheid laws that they have passed against us. And recently, we have been successful in working with Councilwoman Donna Reed Miller to knock down one of those particular barriers, and that is the box that appears on the job applications. We also were successful in getting legislation passed in Harrisburg to get summary offenses taken out of the pardon process and placed into the expungement process as well. Our other issue that we work on is the issue of voting. When I came home in '97, December of '97, formerly convicted people did not have the right to vote. They had took the vote from us. And that was one of my main objectives when I came home, to get our right back. And we were successful in getting that back in the year 2000. 2 years later, they come right back again to try to take the vote back away from us. House Bill 1318, y'all might remember that bill. That was the identification bill. And within that bill, there was a provision to take votes away from formerly convicted people who was convicted for a felony. I would like to say that myself, along with a busload of other formerly convicted people, we visit Harrisburg, we visit the Senate, and to my surprise, they were even more surprised to find out that the folks that they was talking to was all formerly convicted people. And Senator Brightstar, I don't think he's a senator no more, but we went into, let me get a little story. We went into his office and we was talking to his legislative assistant, and she was real cordial, real nice. She said, well, listen, fellas and ladies, y'all just wait a minute. We're gonna clean the, we're gonna fix the conference room up so y'all can come back in the conference room and talk with us. We said, okay. So then she turned around and said, is all of y'all ex-offenders? We said, yeah. She said, well, all right, we can meet right here. But however, they was one of the ones that was behind making sure that that provision got taken out. And after the Senate took the provision out, the House of Representatives put it back in and sent it back to the Senate. And the Senate took it back out again. That's the reason why when that law passed, it was never mentioned, was because of that busload of formerly convicted people. And what that said to me is that once we get organized and put ourselves into an organization, that we can make some kind of changes in terms of our situation. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. Of course, my name is Donna Reed Miller, and I'm the councilwoman for the 8th Council District. And that district is in the northwestern part of Pennsylvania. I start from Lehigh Avenue and go all the way up to Northwestern Avenue, which is where Chestnut Hill College is. So I have Chestnut Hill, East and West Mount Airy, Germantown, Nicetown, Tioga, and Logan, and North Philadelphia. You know, for many years, I've been working on legislation that would help individuals with criminal records, and what helped motivate me. First of all, I'm an old social worker, so I just care about people, care about what happens to folks. And I worked in employment and training for a number of years, and I always prided myself, and my coworkers and people that knew me knew that I could really help people get a job. I was not a job developer, but I just, you know, really wanted to see people succeed. And I found it very difficult to help folks with criminal records to get jobs. When you're out and about in a community, you know, people stop you all the time. And one of the biggest reasons people stop me as an elected official is that they're looking for employment and housing. So a few years ago, in 2004, I really wanted to find out, well, what is happening? Who are people that are providing services for ex-offenders, or as Wayne says, formerly convicted people? In 2004, I introduced a resolution in City Council that called for public hearings to examine and analyze the community reentry process, and just trying to figure out, well, what is there, what's out there, what are the needs? And as a result of that hearing, actually it was 2 days of hearing, so many people came to testify that we just couldn't get to everybody. But after 2 days of hearing, the mayor at that time was John Street, created the Office of Reentry. In 2006 and 2010, I introduced legislation that would help combat discrimination against individuals with criminal records in the area of employment, and that's where we are today. just this week, Wednesday, we had a hearing on one of the bills that I introduced, and as sort of an acronym, we call it Ban the Box. And what that bill does for both private and public employers is to take that question of whether you've been convicted of a felony, et cetera, off the front page of the application, off the application itself. Because I'm sure you're aware, and I'm certainly aware, that many times when an employer looks at the application and sees that box checked, and even though some may say, you know, please explain, people might write in, I want to explain. Once they see that box checked, it's put to the side. It's either dumped or it's just put to the side, never to be seen again. So we thought that this legislation, which there's a whole movement in the United States to get these kind of laws passed. Philadelphia is not the first, and we're not going to be the last. In fact, someone from Pittsburgh came to our hearings on Wednesday because they're also interested in doing this, and it's my understanding. So since Philadelphia is doing it, Camden is interested, and another place, I can't remember.
Well, quite a few places, but we know Pittsburgh is going to be interested, and we're going to look at Delaware County as well.
There was a conference just held recently in Alabama where people came together nationally to discuss this whole issue. So, you know, as the 8th District Council person, you know, I really want to do things to help my constituents and help constituents citywide. Many times you ride through neighborhoods, you see people standing on corners. They're not there because they want to be there. They're bored. They want to work, cannot find work. And as William Neschwatz said, who's my legislative director, in the video, you know, almost an easy 1/2 of our population has someone in their family or relationship that's a formerly convicted person. On City Council, I chair public safety. So we're always trying to think of ways to address the issue of public safety for citizens of Philadelphia. And I'm going to stop there because we all know what happens and how getting people employed will help with so many areas, particularly poverty. And what do people do? They'll go back to their own survival skills and figure out a way to take care of their families. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. My name's Tom Innes. I'm, as you heard, with the Public Defender's Office of Philadelphia. Let me first thank Lisa Margulies and Arlene Finkelstein-Rivera and Dean Fitz for including the Defender's Office and the project I'm going to talk about in this in the loop of this, and also to say that I'm really happy to be here at the Spare Symposium. I'm a child of the 60s. I remember Ed Spare, and I think it's a wonderful event that's held every year in his honor and to keep his memory alive. As I said, I'm with the Public Defender's Office. I'm something called the Director of Prison Services for the Defender Association. The Public Defender's Office in Philadelphia is made up of 500 plus employees, 235 of whom are attorneys. We represent, in fact, upwards of 75% of the people in Philadelphia who are arrested for crimes, and we certainly represent 75% of the people in Philadelphia who are incarcerated on State Road, and certainly many of those who are up in the Department of Corrections, state correctional institutions. We're a nonprofit corporation, and the city in Philadelphia, in essence, purchases our services to represent citizens, as I laid out. As the Director of Prison Services, I'm the liaison between the office of all those people and all those attorneys and the Philadelphia prison system, and between the office and the State Department of Corrections. I'm, in fact, an invited guest to the Board of Trustees, which nominally or technically, I guess to some degree, actually runs the Philadelphia prison system. As such, I help to shoulder responsibility for all those who are incarcerated, for their welfare and how they're being treated. And as of today, there are 7,200 people on State Road. And part of my responsibility is to help with the reentry programs and reentry, both inside and outside the prison. About 7 years ago, the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society was called up and asked there was a greenhouse behind the House of Corrections just along the Delaware River that was no longer being used by the prison. And the Horticultural Society was asked if they had any use for it, and they picked up on that right away, and they began to run a program of teaching basic gardening to inmates. And the inmates would grow seedlings, which were then grown to maturity at community gardens around the city and at the jail, and the produce from those vegetable seedlings and mature plants was then distributed to area food cupboards for distribution in turn to families in need around the city. About 900 families a year, families in need, are receiving vegetables and foodstuffs as a result of that. In the meantime, what we saw was how interested the inmates were in the program. In fact, through the help of Deputy Mayor Gillis and others, we were able to get some of those inmates to show up at the flower show one morning each year before the crowds came in, much to the consternation of law enforcement. But they got to understand that these people were not a threat to society, and they went through the flower show and loved it. So as we started to look around and what we could do with this, somebody appeared in our midst, a guy named Ken Kaloji, who is a landscape contractor and owns a business called KJK Associates. Ken came to us at the prison. At this point, the us was just us and myself and the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society and the prison authorities, and said, I'll tell you what, guys, I will promise you 10 jobs in landscaping, not all with me, but with people I know. Those 10 jobs will be filled by inmates coming out of the Philadelphia prison system. You tell me how we're going to do it. With that in mind, we met with him and we decided to start putting together this village. I mean, basically what we're talking about here today is it takes a village, right? I mean, it's the old African proverb about it takes a village to build this or to build that or to raise a child. And I think to a great extent, a lot of these issues we're beginning to find it takes a village to put together. And so we structured a program. We called it Roots to Reentry, and the program goes like this. We start people, inmates, in those greenhouses behind the House of Corrections. They work there for 8 to 12 weeks. They learn very basic gardening skills. During that time, we meet with them. We talk to them about people who would be particularly interested in working in landscaping, working in gardening, and working outside. As a result of that, we then, as the attorneys for these men and women, apply to the judge for work release. That is, instead of doing their sentence 24 hours a day inside the prison, they'll be able to work during the day and come back to prison to sleep. We've been very lucky, and almost everybody we've asked the judges to turn into work release sentences have done so. Those inmates get moved to a facility that's just for work release, which actually is pretty close to here. When they get there, they then start working at Bartram Gardens in Southwest Philadelphia. They work there full day. They work there for about 6 weeks. They work there under the tutelage of the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, Ken Kaloji and KJK Associates, and others. During that time, they're learning not just how to plant a seedling, they're learning real hardcore skills in landscaping, in gardening, in using power tools, in design, in terms of gardening, pruning, and so on and so forth. During that 6 weeks, we watch them, we help them, we work with them, and then they have a goal, and their goal is to graduate from the program. On a given day, the people who've been successful, and frankly, all 11 of our candidates have been successful up to this point, those 11 people are listed for graduation. At the graduation, we've worked it out so that the judge who has sentenced the person to jail will parole the person on that day. On that same day, they'll get a graduation diploma from the program. And most importantly, I think, on that day, they'll meet their full-time permanent employer in the landscape and gardening industry. So they've gone from doing seedling work through working at real skills, and then when they get to graduation, They meet an employer and they get real jobs for which they're skilled. They're skilled jobs, and we're not just talking about minimum wage. The graduation's a big deal. Family comes. You know, for some of these guys, they've never actually had a real graduation in any way, shape, or form. They certainly haven't had a graduation where judges have shown up, where the last two graduations, the mayor of Philadelphia has shown up, and where the deputy mayor has shown up. And when I talk about showing up, I don't mean like a drive-by to say hi. I mean, the mayor at both graduations stayed for the entire 2 or so hour graduation ceremony and actually took part in it and thanked everybody, addressed the family, and addressed the inmates. Now, as of right now, last year we had 11 inmates go through the program. 10 of those 11 inmates are successful. They're still holding their jobs, and they're doing well on parole. As a result of that, we have been given expanded funding, both expanded old funding and new funding, and this year we've been challenged to double the number of people that we're going to bring into the program. We started a class last week at Bartram Gardens, and because we're doubling the number of people in the program, we're bringing on Aubrey Arboretum. So we have Bartram Gardens in Southwest Philly and Aubrey Arboretum up in Germantown, and we will be running these classes there for the entire summer, and after 3 to 4 to 5 weeks, depending on the program, these people will be graduating and finding full-time employment, not looking for full-time employment, getting full-time employment. The people that have helped us with it are the Scattergood Foundation and the Philadelphia Foundation, the JOIN, which is the Job Opportunity Investment Network, and the Social Innovation Fund, SIF. Now, the most important part of the story and why we bring it to you today is that after the first couple meetings, what we had to do was to develop and bring together the village. We started with the people who were in the prison system and with people from the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, but very quickly we gathered a group of 20 to 25 people. People from the mayor's office for reentry, people from other parts of the mayor's office, from the other parts of the Horticultural Society, people from the prison system, people from probation and parole, from the district attorney's office, certainly from the defender's office, and so on. And once a month we sit around a table, and it's a round table, and we just have a moderator, somebody who facilitates the meeting, and we go around that table and talk about each of the candidates who's in the program and people that have been through the program. Everybody brings their own expertise to the table. But the important thing and what the success of the program is that nobody looks at it is that their commitment is this once-a-month meeting. We all have each other's cell phones. We all text each other. Whenever a problem develops with an inmate, with a candidate, or with somebody who's graduated and is out working, somebody gets a call, and we get on top of it. So it's sort of like a jails to jobs program toppled on top of or piled on top with a mentoring program. It's a terrific program. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it started with those 10 jobs from 10 Kaloji. There's no doubt about it. And once we had those 10 jobs, the sweet smell of success really got people to be interested in the program and to work on it. And we're hoping this is a viral situation. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we met with Jane Golden and Mural Arts, and we're hoping to put together the same kind of Jails to Jobs program through them. But really the bottom line is getting the village together, and the village includes not all the kind of people I talked about, but very importantly is private industry, is the employers. Phil.
My name is Felipe, or Phil Restrepo, whatever you're more comfortable with. I'm a United States Magistrate Judge here in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania. And the background of our program, it started several years ago, and it's the acronym that was chosen by the judges in the Eastern District is STAR, which is Supervision to Aid Reentry. Recognizing that there was a serious problem with recidivism and violent crime in Philadelphia, the judges in the Eastern District decided to try to do something about it, and they came up with this program. And the program is described in some detail in a memorandum that was written by myself and Judge Rice. It's available for you. It's about 7 or 8 pages long. There's also a memorandum in the hall from the Deputy Attorney General of the United States encouraging the United States Attorney's offices all over the country to actively participate in reentry programs as they're implemented in the different districts. What I want to focus on is the one we're running here in the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, which is a little different than most. And it's different given the demographics of the participants. The demographics of our participants are folks who have served long federal prison sentences for extremely violent crimes that are coming back to Philadelphia. And our goal here is to do what we can to keep these folks from falling down or from being rearrested. And it's a very cooperative program. It only works, and using Tom's words, I'll describe our village to you. Our village includes representatives from the United States Attorney's Office, the Federal Defender's Office, the United States Department of Probation, the United States Department of Justice, the VIP program in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Community College, representatives from various law schools. We have students from all the law schools in the area that are helping us out. And there's a wide variety of other folks that are helping us on different issues. And the way the program works is when probation gets word that one of the individuals that fit the matrix, as it were, is being released to a halfway house in Philadelphia, they go interview this individual, and they tell this person about the program. The program is described to these folks in some detail, and among the details they're told is that they'll have to meet with a magistrate judge once every 2 weeks. I meet on Tuesday mornings, every other Tuesday morning. Judge Rice meets every other Wednesday in the afternoon. We've set it up that way so if there's a conflict with jobs, these gentlemen, when I say gentlemen, the vast majority of our participants are men. So these gentlemen can choose a section that doesn't conflict with their employment. When we get together, well, before we get together, the probation officer assigned to our cadre, I have, George Reed is the gentleman that works with me that from U.S. Probation, sends us a report about each individual and their progress or lack thereof over the last 2 weeks. So everybody has the same information. I get the report, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Federal Probation, the folks from the Department of Justice. We get together in my office at 8:45 in the morning, and we go through the reports on each guy. And we talk about each guy. And obviously, more time is devoted to the gentleman that might need a little more assistance. And if there is a serious issue, these gentlemen had signed a contract to participate in the program that puts them on notice that there is a series of sanctions, as it were, in my tool chest. I could do anything if the circumstances so warranted, from house arrest back to the federal detention center, not give them credit for the 2 weeks. There's a wide variety of tools at my disposal, but we really try to do it the Quaker method, by consensus. And I can't think of a time when we haven't been able to reach consensus. I then go out into court and address each individual in the group that come to the lectern. Nobody's put under oath. And they talk to me, and I talk to them about what they've been up to the last 2 weeks. Some of the conversations are rather brief, some are more or longer. One of the things that I've been pushing recently is to have the guys talk to each other about where they're working and whether their employer is hiring. I think we've been fairly successful in identifying employers that are friendly to our participants because these guys already have jobs there, so I ask them, tell us how the other guys go about getting a job where you're working. If somebody brings a job to another participant, they get more credit. And when I say credit, the end game here is that when they successfully complete 52 weeks, a motion is made to probation. And we also have a graduation ceremony, much like the one Tom described, where the sentencing judges are there. And they're presented with a motion to reduce their term of supervision by a year after having completed the program successfully. And you'll note that I don't say consecutive 52 weeks. Some guys need a little more encouragement along the way. But once they have reached 52 weeks of satisfactory performance, they are eligible for graduation. I know I'm out of time. I just want to invite everybody here, and I do mean it, that if any of you have any real interest in this program, you're more than welcome to come watch it. It's hard to describe it. I see several of you in the audience that have been there, and it's nothing like you've ever seen in a courtroom before. And I would encourage you, if you really have an interest, my invitation, I'm sure I speak for Judge Rice, you're all welcome. Just give us a ring, and I'll tell you when and where to show up. And you'd be more than welcome to sit through the conversation we have in the back as well as the courtroom presentation. And I'm sure we'll have a time for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to start with just a few targeted questions. And then, as we go on, I'm hoping that the participants will ask each other questions. And if you have questions from the audience, feel free, in about 20 minutes, people with microphones, Meredith, Nikki, to either write your questions down on the index card or prepare them and come ask. So the first question is for Mr. Jacobs. So from an individual perspective, what do you think that the challenges are facing individuals with criminal convictions?
Well, I would like to say, first of all, that the challenge is the laws that they pass against formerly convicted people to prevent them being able to work at their skill level, be able to get housing, be able to acquire higher education. These are the obstacles that most formerly convicted people are faced with. In terms of female convicted persons, they are faced with the obstacle of trying to reobtain their family, to reunite their family. These are the obstacles that most of us are faced with, is the fact that the laws that y'all pass, the laws that, not y'all, but the laws that our government passed to prevent us from making a successful reentry back in. Also, in terms of what is going on inside the prison itself, I remember when I first got arrested and was up to the detention center, they used to have what they call an orientation, where when the new prisoners come in, they give you the law. They give you the rules and regulations on how you're supposed to conduct yourself in the prison. And one of the things that that always stuck with me was the guard says there's two ways that you can do your time. You can either serve time or time can serve you. And that really stuck with me, and this is what people need to start focusing on, is not so much of getting people reentry once they're in the street. I think the focus should be while they are incarcerated. While they are incarcerated, they should be encouraged, to let time serve them instead of them just serving time. This is the reason why a lot of folks come home without GEDs. How long you did? I did 5 years. You ain't never get a GED? No. So I think that the whole emphasis should start while a person is incarcerated, so that person can be ready to face them obstacles and know what obstacles, because a lot of time formerly convicted people come home, they don't even know what job they can get, what school they can go to, what housing program they can live in. So they actually, and my organization assists people with cleaning up their criminal background records. And we have people come to us and say, yeah, I just graduated from nursing school, and I can't even practice what I learned. But nobody never told her or told that person when they sign up to go to that school that there's nothing at the end of this. And this is what frustrates people, because there's so many obstacles placed against us that we don't know which one it is. So I really think that things should, it should start, one, while they're incarcerated, and that process should continue once they get released.
If I can just add, one of the things Mr. Jacobs has mentioned is one thing that the Nutter administration that we changed upon taking office in 2008. The RISE office has now been established by executive order. But even more to the point, my working with the Prisons Commissioner, Lou Giorla, we have taken just that approach and has changed the way that we assess people in the jail. And I want to make sure people understand there are jails that hold people pre-trial until they are ready to go to trial, and then there are sentenced in area, and the county, you can serve up to 11.5 to 23 months in the county jail before going back out and going back to society. And then there are state prisons, which you can do anything beyond the 11.5 or the county sentence. When you go to state prison, you are basically removed from Philadelphia and you're going to different places all around the state of Pennsylvania. our approach has been that we now assess people. And as a result of that assessment, after 2 weeks, usually 50% of the people who are arrested in the city of Philadelphia are bailed out after 2 weeks. And so they will spend their time awaiting trial on the street. The other 50%, however, probably due to the fact that we have a 25 to 26% poverty rate in the city, those folks actually stay in the jail awaiting time before they go to trial. We have taken the approach that we will assess you. We will actually find out what your literacy rate is, because we have found, after doing a study just last year, that approximately 35 to 40% of the people who are in our jails read at a first or second grade level. They have a financial literacy rate at the third grade level or dealing with math. We have to really take a look at, obviously, our educational system and how this needs to be fixed. But for me, as deputy mayor, my point to the commissioner was we must provide additional services to help people understand where they are, because if they don't understand where they are, they really can't help themselves. So our assessment begins. There is always going to be an assessment for drug and alcohol and mental health issues. There was always an assessment to try to get people reintegrated with their housing needs. But this basic assessment on financial and reading literacy is something that caught me, and I've been in the system for 30 years in one capacity or another, caught me by surprise, because I really thought we were dealing with roughly a 6th or 7th grade level. We were not dealing with that. We're dealing with really a 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade level, and how that impacts the programs that are going on in the prison. We have now developed cohorts that allow us to deal with what we are facing in the prison. Yes, we have tripled our ability to provide people a GED while they're awaiting their trials. We have now graduated over the last 2 years, on average, 325 people get their GEDs in the Philadelphia County prison systems while awaiting trial. And since there was about 1,500 to 2,000 people that got their GEDs citywide, we are providing opportunities for people. For 1/5 of the people who are getting GEDs in the city are doing it in jail. The reason why we're doing it is because it is taking a village. All of us have to take an opportunity to take a look at and start the process for reintegration while you are in custody. And that's been my focus since being in the chair. That will continue to be my focus, and I think that's the only way that we can go forward. The other piece to rise that we emphasize is that the city cannot provide the services for everyone. We have to take a realistic look, especially in these economic times, of what the proper role of government should be. It should not be a super bureaucracy working on its own, trying to say that it can answer everyone's problems. We take a different approach. We actually believe in partnering with nonprofits and for-profit companies, quite frankly, because they're going to be there. They will be there doing their work. The faith-based institutions, the nonprofits that have been in this area for quite a long time, the for-profit companies that are trying to get into this area now. What we believe is that the city should be the accountability officer, basically bringing people together, working them through the managed reentry network, which is what, if you imagine a healthcare network where different specialties are done by different areas, we partner with our nonprofit folks and our for-profit individuals, and we serve as the database and also the link that will take and move people through the system and targeting what we are trying to make sure that what their assessments show. That's the key link in the difference between what RISE has been doing over the last 2.5 years, and our emphasis is on making sure that recidivism is the key. We don't need to have people going in and going out, going in and going out. What we need to do is meet people where they are, provide the services to them, have them take personal responsibility for themselves, and moving on. So we agree wholeheartedly with Mr. Jacobs. I know that we work with a lot of the people that are up here, but I think that the focus really needs to be on making sure we get people to understand where they are, meet their needs, engage them where they are respectfully, and then move them through the system so they don't come back. You will not have another victim if you end up meeting the person where they are and providing alternatives, which is the challenge, but that's the challenge that we all are undertaking.
And to follow up on what the deputy mayor said, just keep in mind the fact that if 50% of the people in jail read at a first or second grade level, that means 50% of the people in jail probably can't fill out a job application. They probably can't follow a bus schedule to get to work, right? So you have threshold issues here that have to be dealt with, and I know the prison has started a mentoring program inside the prison for, we definitely have people in jail who are very proficient at reading, and those people want to give back. The inmates already are into giving back to other inmates by helping them and helping work with them in GED. We found at Roots to Reentry that we had people who were dying to go in the program. They couldn't read the instruction manuals for a chainsaw, for an edger. And so we had to go back and reconsider how we were looking for people to be in the program.
Yes, and I'd like to add that in our hearing just a couple weeks ago, when the deputy mayor reported that they were going to start to test all inmates and do an assessment, I was very happy to hear that, because I think what's happening is when people don't know where they are, then they have unrealistic expectations. And when you're trying to help them, and so many people want immediate gratification. I was talking to someone the other day, a young man, who said to me, when I was a little boy, I used to have dreams about growing up and buying a car and buying a house, and where are those dreams? And I said, those dreams can still come true, but you have to start somewhere. And I know that this is one that's been trying to, he can read, and he does have a reading level that will help him accomplish getting a GED, but he has not put the importance of getting that GED with helping to succeed and accomplish his dreams. And just the other night, I was having another discussion with him and I said, well, he says, I'm going to get me a job. I said, okay, so what kind of job are you going to get? So he says, well, I was thinking the other day, and this is probably like the 5th time he told me he was getting a different type of job, that he was going to be, I believe he said, an architectural engineer. So I said, okay, so where'd that come from? Because it's totally different than what he said in the past. But I said, well, don't you think it's important to get your GED first? Because it sounds like you need specific training for the architectural engineer, because he said he was actually going to create a firm. So I think it's important when people know where they are, and then they have those folks that can help them understand what they need to get where they want to be. That's so important. I was really happy to hear that, because I don't know that the prison system was doing that in the past, whether they were testing everybody.
No.
And so you have all these people that think that they can do this and do that, and they can't fill out an employment application. So our ban-the-box legislation, how does it help those folks? We have to get them in literacy classes and maybe recruit literacy volunteers and other folks that will help them, because 90% of people that are incarcerated are coming back to the community. They're coming back, and we just can't throw them away. So we have to figure out ways that we're going to help them out. I think it's important that we have a resource booklet, because it's like everybody, I realized this too when we had our reentry hearings back in 2004, all these folks are out here doing things, churches and community groups and the Defenders Association, all these people are out here doing things. But is there one set of data that says who they are and where they are?
That's what Rise has it. That's what we've been developing, so
well,
yes.
I hope you do, because, well, when I haven't seen it, I mean, there needs to be, I don't need the list of employers. I need a resource. So we were going to put together our own where to turn directory for, I get so many phone calls at home, at work, emails. As soon as people read the paper about any of the legislation dealing with ex-offenders, they're on the phone. They're calling to get information. And you just don't want to just send them a whole bunch of places. But there needs to be, and I know RISE has information, I know that all these groups have information, but we need to work together as a network and figure out where to help people, where to send people where they can really get the help.
I think it's worth maybe talking for a minute about the significance of the Ban the Box movement that the Councilwoman is so strongly behind. The people understand the Ban the Box, which is that the employer's application would not be able to ask questions about prior criminal record on the applicant. And the reason that that's important, it's only a step, but the reason why that's important is because there isn't that triage of, you know, you go through the applications, this one's got a record, that goes in the round file cabinet, right? The one that's the garbage. And the one without a criminal record may be in one that we'll interview. And the important thing is to get past that triage step so that people can at least get the interview. Now, at the interview, things can change drastically, but the fact is, I was at a meeting with some prospective employers, and one of the employers in a different context said to me, when I interview somebody, I think of them and I look at them and I say, this is a job interview. This is the best this person is ever going to be. And you know, I want to at least give the ex-offender the chance to be, quote unquote, the best he's ever going to be at that job interview, and to see the prospective employer see that and take that into account. And that's the importance of the Ban the Box.
I would like to broaden this conversation. You know, most times when we talk about formerly convicted people, we only talk about people who are incarcerated. Whereas with the conviction rate, more people get convicted for probation than people get incarcerated. But you never hear a conversation about that. And most times that those folks that get probation are the ones that's working. This is probably the reason why they got the probation for the crime that they was convicted for. And most times they are working. But as soon as they get convicted, they lose their job, and 9 times out of 10, they may get kicked out of their apartment. Because if you don't have no job, you can't afford your apartment. But you don't hear that conversation. You only hear formerly incarcerated people. The other conversation that you don't hear is about the people who are no longer on probation and parole. People that had demonstrated that they are no longer involved in crime. No assistance for them. Ban the Box will help them, because those folks are the ones that have been out here maybe for 10, 20, 25 years, been working. Now, since the economy done turned down, they are now facing a whole new reality. And these folks got the working experience. These people are not reading on the 3rd grade level. You know, so I just wish this conversation can be broadened and talk about the whole picture. That's the reason why we use the term formerly convicted and not ex-offender, you know, because it doesn't make a difference. If a person get probation, they get incarceration, even if a person feels that they was forced to plead guilty, which happens every day in the court system, and they may have been innocent. You know, those folks do not consider themselves as ex-offenders. And we don't talk about that. We only talk about incarceration. Why? Because incarceration costs us more money. It ain't about addressing the issue of what to do about the issue. It's how we're going to save money. So it's really not about saving lives. It's about saving money. And we're only going to talk about one part of the picture.
Well, along the line of what Wayne's talking about, I try to mention every time I speak someplace about a book called The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, which I think is worth everybody taking a look at. She's spoken at least twice in the city, and I'm pretty sure she's been interviewed by Terry Gross. But the book itself is a pretty amazing piece of work, and it looks at the fact that the black codes of the late 1900s and the early 20th century have been resurrected in terms of the badges and incidents, not of slavery this time, but of prison confinement and conviction and what that brings on a daily basis to the formerly incarcerated in terms of the right to vote, the right to live where you can live, the right to jobs, the right to all kinds of public assistance. And it's certainly worth taking a look at if you're looking for, as they say, further reading on the subject.
Go ahead. Go right ahead. I know we're a little behind in the questions.
No, that's great. Yeah. Do you want to?
No, go right ahead.
Okay. So we actually have a couple questions from the audience, which is fantastic. And if you have any questions for each other, that would be fantastic too. One question we have that relates to this conversation is, many people who have never broken the law have literacy and employment issues. Why should resources in this tight economy be diverted to those who have committed crimes?
I'll be glad to answer that, because I think that you can't, you will never be able to have one society if you always keep a us versus them mentality. We have to get beyond that. People who there's only one person called a human being. We are all human beings. We all have issues. We all have deficits. Therefore, whether you like it or not, one person's deficit and another person's deficit, if it's the same, they should both be allowed to progress from there. And the good thing is that for over 30 years or 40 years, we've had this ridiculous mindset that says that we're going to keep people divided rather than taking them as they are, dealing with their problems as they are, and moving them forward. Literacy takes literally, an opportunity is there. I have actually told people whenever they have a literacy issue now that we're really pushing this in our administration, both inside the jail and outside the jail. If you have a problem and you need to have your literacy issue, bring people who are in your family who probably have the same issue, because we can teach the same time, the same number of people in that class, whether they have records or not. It's not about the record, it's about offering the opportunity and making sure everybody has an equal opportunity for that. I think that's one of those questions that I get everywhere I go. And I just think, and when I turn it back, I just ask people, think about the fact that if you're continuing to divide people, you'll never get past where we are today. And I just think that it's time for us to flip this script and move forward.
Yeah, so just as a follow-up to that question, what are the effects on the community beyond the individual? How do criminal convictions impact a community, families, a neighborhood?
Well, for me, I think that it's the fear issue that is always bandied about. And I think that what the councilwoman said should be reiterated. 90% of the people who are involved in the criminal justice system will come home. The question is, what kind of home are they going back to? If the community is constantly going to say that even though you pled guilty to something that may be as light as a misdemeanor, no matter what you do, you have been given a life sentence, I think that we have lied both to ourselves and to society as we go forward. We must make a choice, and I think that the experiment over the last 40 years in criminal justice has shown itself to be an abject failure. You can look at the incarceration rates, you can look at the criminal rates, and you will see that crime has pretty much stayed within the same parameter it has always stayed, but the incarceration rates have been double, triple, and even quadruple. And all we've gotten for that is massive debt, massive incarceration of people, and then nowhere for them to go when they come back. We need to admit the fact that the way that we approach crime and the way that we approach basically paying for the crime that one does is not a life sentence for everybody who is touched by this matter. I have seen people, one day they are a victim, the next day they're a criminal defendant, the next day they're a victim again. So it's really about focusing as a society on how are we going to deal with people, and once persons have paid their debt, how are we going to move them off that dime and move forward? One day I would like to actually have that instead of having even formally convicted people or ex-offenders or whatever, that after you've done everything, you're just a person again and you go forward and you get yourself back into society and you become productive. That's my dream, and I think I'll be working on that for the rest of my life.
The reentry courts in the federal system, in essence, recognize what Everett just said, and I can tell you that I've heard our U.S. Attorney Zane Meminger often speak to groups, and he's a big advocate of telling everybody we're not going to arrest our way out of the problem. And the transition, when these folks come home, is very difficult. And it impacts, obviously, their families. It impacts the communities they're going to live in, and it impacts all of us. And I think that is what has really prompted the Department of Justice, the Administrative Office of the United States Courts, and all the judges and U.S. attorneys, probation officers, federal defenders, and everybody else has recognized that something has to be done a little different if we're going to make any real headway here. And that's why we're doing what we're trying to do what we're doing.
The other part that it does, what other way it can impact, other than what the judge said and the deputy mayor stated, is that it impacts our budgets, and it impacts our ability to put increased money in recreation, prevention programs, education. So we have to have shelters, food programs, all kinds of things. Okay.
So I think that's a great segue as well to what do you need from the other panelists to get the projects that you're working on started? How can you collaborate to help each other to make these goals a reality?
I'll tell you what I need from the audience, not so much from the other panelists. We need you folks to be willing to step up and hire people.
That's right.
We need you folks to be willing to step up and mentor our participants. A lot of these guys have literacy issues. A lot of these folks have issues that of every variety. And unless everybody's willing to take a laboring oar, it's just not going to work. And we've been big proponents of getting out there and getting the community colleges involved, the bar associations involved, but it really takes everybody to get involved. And if you know somebody that has a job, give me a call, because we have somebody that may be able to do it. So, I mean, what we really need is everybody to get involved.
And there's study after study after study shows that it's in the 80s, 87% of the people who violate parole are unemployed, 90% of the people who violate parole are unemployed. It's jobs and it's housing, and that's what it's all about. And the real insidiousness of the job situation is that there are employers out there who hire ex-offenders, previously incarcerated people, but the fear, they don't want other people to know that they've hired them. So you can't really, it's hard to piggyback from, well, this company is doing hiring of ex-offenders, and they haven't had any problems, and so why can't you move in that direction to do it well? But because that first company doesn't want anybody that they're doing it. They're doing great work. They're hiring any number of people. We know big corporations in the city that are doing it. But God forbid you should tell anybody who they are, because they don't want it out there that they hire ex-offenders.
And I'll actually talk about it in another way. We have tried over the last 3 years to begin to break this cycle of just always having community, because the community really needs to be at the forefront of this. The community has to accept not only the responsibility for their friends, neighbors, uncles, brothers, whatever. The community has to be part and parcel of the dialogue. But what we end up hearing more than likely and more than not is, I go into a community, I will talk about trying to put in programs that not only cost less money, but are shown to actually work to keep people on the straight and narrow. And the first thing that I get hit with is NIMBYism, which I think that you all understand the acronym, not in my backyard. So we have this clash right now that will require us as a community and for leaders to actually go out, sometimes take the scorn of people in order to prove the fact that if we work together and collaborate with one another, citing these needed programs in community where people are going back to anyway, making sure it can be less costly for us, we can get a higher and better opportunity and a product, meaning that we can have people being supported where they are, and we will be able to keep that next victim from happening, which will ultimately drive down our crime rates. I mean, that's the point. And for me, it's all about just attacking the elephant in the room. It's about NIMBYism, and a lot of times it's about race, and I know people don't want to deal with that, but I have, that's just part of the deal as well.
Let me make one other pitch. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
I look at it in two ways. I'm sitting here listening to the judge, the deputy mayor, and Mr. Higgins, and they talk about how they sitting down, putting together these programs, these policies with all these so-called experts. but you didn't hear them mention that they had one formerly convicted person sitting at that table help shaping the policy. You know, we are excluded. Once again, you know, when you look at this, if you're talking about helping us, why are we all excluded from helping ourselves? You know, we need to be, for one, we need to be sitting at the table, shaping those policies. Two, we need to be given the opportunity to be able to be in the street, to be the leadership, to become the leaders in our community. You know, crazy that it sounds, most young folks today look up to who? They don't look up to old heads. They look up to OGs. They look up to people who've been there and done that. But however, you know, mentoring programs, we can't do them because we got a conviction. We're the ones that can tell the kid about a bad decision. That because we lived that decision. You know, I just think that this thing should be broadened. We should be included in this. And I know I'm changing the subject.
No,
but
that's fine. But,
yeah,
you know, for what it's worth.
But one other thing, and I'm sitting up here listening, and I really have a problem with that. And that is y'all constantly refer to anybody that's been convicted as an ex-offender. And you know as well as I know that the criminal justice system do convict innocent people. So when you category just say everybody convicted is an ex-offender, you're saying that the criminal justice system never convict innocent people. You know, this is the reason why I be pushing that terminology, formerly convicted.
Okay, well,
it doesn't make a difference.
I'll be happy to put my other hat on as a member of the board of the Pennsylvania Innocence Project, and we can have another panel later in the day about that very subject.
Okay.
And let me just jump in for a minute on this business about not being included, sir. In our program, the folks are included every time we get together. We solicit their advice as to how we improve the program. We have roundtables where the participants, both the graduates and the current participants, meet with the leadership of the program, including the judges, and they are asked, how do we improve the program? What should we be doing? Their comments and their suggestions are taken seriously, and they're incorporated into the program.
Judge, I'd just like to ask, does your program hear information regarding the halfway houses? How do we?
It's back to the money. We have funding, we have access to halfway houses through the federal funds. I don't know how it would cross-pollinate with the city. That's something, you know, maybe we should talk to Everett about.
Well, no, I wasn't talking so much about the funding. I mean, if you need more, you need more, and that's a whole different discussion.
No, I'm just saying, I don't know if we can share our funding.
Yeah, but just what happens when someone's there. Some of the guys just seem to have, and I keep saying men, and I do know it's women, but they just seem to have issues when they are assigned to a halfway house.
No, there are a lot of issues, no doubt. And I've been to the halfway house. I felt that I had to go visit the halfway houses if I'm going to send somebody to a halfway house. So I've been there, and I know that it's a difficult place to be. When somebody is stepped down, as it were, from the Bureau of Prisons, from one of the facilities to a halfway house where they're going to live, it's not a happy place, obviously. I know the halfway houses are doing the best they can to help these folks find jobs, and they have self-interest because they're collecting rent. I mean, at the end of the day, they have a strong incentive to help these folks find jobs, but again, there's a reason for their self-interest.
Okay.
But I don't quite understand your question. I know that there are a lot of issues.
Well, I think I probably want to ask the question when I'm not on the panel.
All right.
And unfortunately.
But I know one thing, you know, to have people in the halfway house, and if they don't get that rent money, they go back. They go back in. They have to go back. They have to be able to pay their rent money. They have to be able to pay their rent. And if they can't get a job, you know, then they back in. They can't, from my understanding, if they want to go to school, they can't go to school. They have to go to work. Because schooling, you can't pay the rent.